Okay. We're going over portfolio because ideally when you're in your classroom, this is what you'll be using to kind of share with families. For you personally this semester, you're actually creating a e-portfolio, which is a digital portfolio instead. But I'm just going to go over like the gist of it and how everything's connected. Once you have your own classroom, you're going to start creating these. And then usually we do a binder. So ideally for this classroom, if we weren't during the pandemic or whatnot, we would actually create a portfolio, an actual one, and bring it to class and submit that into me. But now we're just going to do it digitally. Okay. So it's basically, let me make sure. Okay. Communication between home and school. Right? So these are some stuff that you can think of that you're doing already or you're going to do in your classroom, okay? So how are you talking to families? How do you communicate with families on a regular basis? Okay, so if you're not in a classroom yet, what are some ideas that you think you can do? If you had your ideal classroom, how would you communicate with family on a daily basis?
I would set up maybe like I think like maybe a personal message just for the parents, where I would send out like daily text to inform them what's going on in the classroom, if anything has happened, if they need to bring something, what to wear, like any activity that we were doing, just to communicate. And then also I would also have like a personal maybe website where it would just kind of have like a calendar of the month to show us just daily communication with the parents.
Yes, like a Google Classroom, Google site. And there's so many apps out there that you can communicate with family. You're right, keeping that ongoing communication. So one thing I always remind students, like, I know you want to have a relationship with family, but definitely do not give them your personal cell phone number. You can, if depending on how well you know the family, but you have to always remember to have boundaries, okay? So yeah, so you can do like Class Dojo where you're using your phone as an app to communicate with family, but they don't have your actual phone number. But my families do have my cell phone number where we do text them or whatnot. But definitely, what else? I know like things change because with COVID now, right? Families can't come into the classroom. Like for our classroom, all of our classroom, we have a transitional area, which is a family area. We have like binders for family, you know, community resources, but now they can't come in. So I hang a lot of stuff outside. So I have daily journals where we type up what the kiddos did that day. We have like our newsletter. Of course, we have our digital Google site now where I'm sharing that with families. We send emails and stuff. And then when they're picking up that child, right, talking to that family. But again, you can't go in depth. You're just like, oh, how are you? You know, they had a good day. This is what happened. But definitely having those ongoing communication is really important. And why is it important to have that ongoing relationship with families? If you're a parent, why would you want the teachers to talk to you?
I think it builds trust between the parent and the family and the child too. So the child sees the teacher communicating with the mom. And so just like a community between the three.
Yes, building that relationship, right? Relationship is so important. Without relationship, if there's issues that's coming up, families won't say anything. Okay, a lot of families are already scared of teachers because if they had a bad encounter or, you know, their past with teachers, right? They're getting in trouble or whatnot. So it's already kind of scary. Or if you don't feel confident if English is your second language and you have to communicate with this teacher, you're like, I don't know, you're already shy about that, right? But building that relationship. So if something did happen, you want to share all those great news, but what happens if something like, hey, you notice this child might need an evaluation because this child might be on the spectrum or this child might need to see a speech pathologist or something, right? So having that communication is really important. So imagine yourself when you have a good relationship with someone and someone's sharing something with you, you're more open. You're like, oh, okay, right? You're up for it. You want to, you know, but if someone you are not really close to share something, you might take it the wrong way. You're like, wait, why are you judging me as a mom? You know, all these other questions where maybe the teacher is asking because they're trying to find help for you, right? So those are important. things to kind of remember, right? Daily contact, personal, descriptive, positive, and ethical responsibilities to family. Definitely being positive. When you have a bad news, I always try to sandwich it. I share some positive stuff. Like, for example, if the child is a little aggressive, so they already know their child have challenges, and it's for them to hear it every time they walk, and you're like, maybe they had a long day at work, they have all sorts of stuff, and you're like, oh, guess what Hunter did today? He was hitting his friends again, right? That's not really helpful. So you want to share the concerns, but at the same time, you want to make sure the family is not over drenched by the bad news. So I always try to do like, oh, so and so help a friend today, and then I would share like some struggles, like, yeah, he's having a hard time with his hand. He's still punching his friends. But I usually don't do that with the daily communication unless it's like that child's super aggressive. But I would email or I would call them personally so the kiddos or the people in the classroom wouldn't hear that. Okay, because if my child is a challenging child, I wouldn't want the teacher to talk to me like, oh yeah, teacher Shamron, guess what Mani did today? And then other parents are there. It's kind of embarrassing, right? And then you feel like people are judging you. So we have to really keep that in mind. Okay, written communications. So we have family handbooks that kind of tell the philosophy, our policy of our school, newsletters. We do a monthly newsletter, which shares the event, what's going on. Next week is Week of the Young Child. So I'm gonna share a week of flyer of things to do, okay? Happy notes to individual successes. We have documentation panels. Basically, it's a panel talking about our previous project, technology email, website, traveling journal. These are just kind of ideas. So you're going to adapt when you have your own classroom, you have your own creativity, you're going to use what works for you. And then depending on the school you're at, what they're expecting, what their expectations are from you. Okay. So for me, I have like I mentioned, the classroom Google site. This is basically the classroom site for families. Oh, this is an old one. Okay. We're updated already to April. Pictures of us in the art studio, our screening, but different resources for families. So meet the teachers, right? So they know who we are. Again, our germ project. Okay. Then we have our newsletter for this month. I usually kind of give them what's happening, what we're doing. I try to do family events. We do everything Zoom right now, but we try to always do like a lunch or breakfast once a month. We do activities. We do family night once a month. So I try to do like a breakfast or a lunch twice a month before, and then a family event where we're talking about our project or whatnot. Okay, and then we always share what's happening with our project. Okay, progress report. So we're going to go over how we're doing it for us, for the class, and how I do it for my classroom. Positive, descriptive, personal. And we're going to talk about, eventually we're going to do a lecture on how to talk to families too. Okay, so working on planning on new basis of conference and stuff. Okay, what to do with it, program policy, depending. Be given to family at the end of the year, go with the child the next school year, be kept in the program. For us, our portfolio, it follows the kiddos. So if they're an infant, toddler, they come to preschool. And then at the end of preschool, I usually have them do like a big painting, and then I wrap it up like as a gift. So at our end of the year celebration, which usually is project related, I would then give them the binder, the portfolio. I had a child who's been here since toddler year, and her binder is super packed. So I actually have to go through and just kind of clean it out and keep like the things that show progress for her. And then so by the end of this year, I will give that to her, and then she's gonna take that with her when she goes to kindergarten, so families can have that to keep. Okay. Some examples are electronic e-portfolio stored on computer, accordion files, file folders. Some people do photo albums or whatnot, but we will be doing portfolios and e-portfolios. Okay. So assessing children's development. Okay, I'm gonna go over how this is all connected. Remember when you did your DRDP evidence, and then I asked you to put your observation into that. So ideally, if you have time, you will try to do that throughout the week. And then by the time you're doing DRDPs, you're like all your evidence pages done. Okay. So this is a cycle, which is called, it's a continuous thing, just like your other observation, right? So you plan, you identify like the outcome. For example, when you're observing the child, you know this child's not really using the scissors, holding the scissors properly, holding a paper and cutting or whatnot, right? So then as a teacher, you're like, okay, we're gonna work on fine motor. So that's when you identify the measure. You're like, okay, what should I do? Okay, if the child has special need, they have their IEP plan. And then you also, as a general ed teacher, like, how do you incorporate their goals into the goals that you're wanting for the child? Okay, so plan the approaches, data. So that's when you collect, you know, you're sharing the project, your presentation or portfolios with family, right? Then you go over it, you discuss it, you talk to families about it. You're like, okay, what can we do next? Make changes, teaching strategies. Maybe the things you're doing right now is not helping that child. Okay, so then we go again and the cycle will continue. You're doing all this all the time. You just don't realize it, that you're doing all of this. For example, if you're a child who's needing support with social development, you will try to create an environment where they're doing stuff together. You're not gonna have them at separate tables and stuff. You want to encourage them to work on things together.
Mommy, can I have the hood?
So in this video, I was so impressed that Liam was playing with Rosalinda. Usually he does stuff on his own, or when he wants to build, he's not quite sure of how to approach it. And they made these germ puppet and they went over and he's like, love you, I need a hug. And she gave him a hug. And they played for almost 30 minutes. And then what I did was I just recorded them and just kind of see their interaction. Okay. And like I mentioned before, you try to create things where it's going to build that cooperation in the classroom. Remember the scenarios we read before where like, oh, there's no classroom community, what things we can do. We're going to use a we word, us. You're going to do a lot of small group activities. So we played the board game. They're drawing on the acrylic here, our little plexiglass. Violet wanted to draw some germ stuff and he's like, I want to draw too. I'm like, sure. He's parallel playing, but right here, he's more cooperative playing. Again, when they're creating the vaccines here with the water beads or the Orbi beads, okay? Let me show you our lesson plan to see how it's all connected. Let me see if I have it a week, what we're doing, okay? And then I usually kind of tell families like what we did last week, what we're planning to do this week. And then I usually add, now I'm adding all like, because of the technology, I love it. I add videos that I'm watching in the classroom for so families can watch with their kiddos if they want to, right? But this is what you're thinking of right here. The DRDP is to connect it. So I only pick 3 domains each week to really focus on, even though ideally in the classroom, we're hitting all those domains when we're doing different stuff, okay? And then you'll go and you'll see my lesson plan, which is in the morning and then in the afternoon, okay? And then this is, families don't see this. So families only see the first and second page. They do not see the third page. This is just for staff. So for example, I will pick just 4 kids to focus on. Okay, so Ilias, Liam, Skyla, and then Krish. So these are the domains, and then these are the measures. And then I will write down things that we're doing, like activity-wise or experiences in the classroom that will support that cause and effect. Inquiry through observation and investigation, communication of using language, right? So these are the things. So for example, if I'm at the table, we're working on vaccines or whatnot, and I'm wanting Elias to come and do the cause and effect, I make sure as a teacher, I'm going to try to invite him like, hey, Elias, you want to come over and do vaccine with me or create vaccine with me? Or, ooh, what happens when you mix the vinegar with the baking soda, right? So I'm more conscious of just making sure I'm supporting that child, because what I've learned is, you know, the kids who are challenging, they get my attention and I know them by the back of my hand because they're always with me. But the kiddos who are listening, who's quiet, who's following instructions, you forget sometimes. because they're just doing their own thing. You're like, if all preschoolers were like that, right? So that's why this way I make sure I really observe all the kids. I really make sure I have the time to interact with each child throughout the week. And then that way, even though I have 24 kids, and then usually myself and my co-teacher, we divide DRDP. So I'll take 12 and she'll take 12. But if we have 30 enrolled or whatnot, if we have an odd number, I make sure I take more kids because I'm the master teacher and she's my co-teacher. Even though we divide the children to do DRDPs, we're all observing the kids and we're all trying to interact with the kids still. Okay. Does that make sense so far? I'm like, okay. Okay. Looking at child's interaction with adults. Okay. Adult interaction, like we learned from class, is so important. So prevention of difficulties, right? How do you do that? You prepare the environment, making sure you're offering the environment that will facilitate children to be curious, but definitely giving them engaged, because sometimes children who are challenging, it's because it's too boring or it's not enough for them to do, or they could be overstimulated or understimulated, right? And realistic expectations. Like, I know you're all going to be amazing, awesome teachers, but definitely make sure your goals are realistic. Don't do something where you're like, I'm not sure. Then you're going to feel like you failed. And even children, if you're giving them unrealistic expectations and they don't achieve those goals, they're going to feel upset. They're going to feel frustrated. Active listening, definitely listening to children, their wants and needs. I know as teachers, you're there to facilitate, to help them academically. But remember that they're humans first before the academics. So really understanding their emotional needs before, like if that child's sitting there crying constantly and you're trying to read your book, it's okay to stop reading the story and go, oh, you know, are you okay? How can I help you? What can I do? Okay. Reaction and solution of behaviors, difficulties. So possible cause of what could cause that, and definitely be positive. Like, what can we do? What can you, like, I have a child right now. She's like, they made me sad. Or when she doesn't get what she wants, she's crying. And, you know, I'm like, well, your friends aren't making you sad. You're sad, but I wonder why you're feeling sad. What do you think you can do to help yourself feel better when you're not getting what you're wanting? And then I'm like, I know it's really disappointing. You really want to play with that and your friend's playing with it right now, but really acknowledging their feelings. Okay. Helping all children through homeschool communication. So keeping that in mind, children from diverse backgrounds, like language interpretation. So if you have a family who speaks Spanish or Hmong or, you know, Mandarin as their first language, and then you're trying to speak to them in English, there could be a loss in translation, right? So they're not really understanding everything that's going on. So maybe finding someone to help interpret. Do not ask the child to interpret. Cultural awareness and competence. Some culture where the male usually does the talking and asking the questions, right? So you have to kind of get a sense of how your families are. I always try to ask everyone. I've learned too, though, like when you ask, when dads come and you're like, oh, hey, nice to see you. It's been a while. Some dads are scared of teachers, or, you know, maybe they had bad encounters with females or something, right? They're like, I'm not going to talk to her. They feel intimidated in a sense. So rather than just saying that, just say, oh, hi, you know, and just leave out the, I haven't seen you in a long time. Even though we're just trying to build that relationship, like, oh, you want to let them know, like, hey, we're so excited that you came. Children with special needs, learn about their different abilities and how can you support that, understand and follow IEP, work cooperatively with therapists to kind of see what you need to do to help support that child. That's it for lecture. Questions so far? I felt like I shared a lot of stuff. You're like, whoa,